So you grew up in the hood, is that right?
That's correct. I did.
And
I
what
am
what hood?
a mixed breed, as they say. My mom was a Latina, and my father, who I did not know, was Yugoslavian. But I grew up in the border of El Paso, Texas, and back in the day when you could cross across the border from El Paso to Juarez. Now you can't do that. And then I was moved to Austin when I was about 9, and grew up in the hood in Austin back in the day when it was hood. Now it's all affluent, but we've changed the city a bit. But yeah, quite a story.
Right on. So you say you never knew your father?
No, sir. I'm one of 4 children. My mother was a very sick human, riddled with drug addiction. Heroin was the drug of her choice, and there were 4 of us, and none of us knew our fathers, with the exception of my older brother, who knew of his father, and he was a married man my mom was involved in, but none of us knew our fathers. And so we grew up in what I call abject poverty there on a border town, riddled with a mother who had lots of addiction to drugs, mental illness, and her entire life was plagued with significant challenges that she grew up with, and then passed them on to us.
Wow.
So did not know my father.
Would you like to know your father? What is that like never knowing your father? It's like
Well,
something is missing.
Jesse, as you know, we have a significant pandemic in America called the fatherless generation.
Right.
So I'm one of millions and millions of kids and now adults that, never knew their father. But my father was actually, I'm told, the owner of a nightclub my mom used to dance in. She was a go-go dancer when she was in her drug use and back in the day. And he was a one-night stand. And so, I wasn't even told about his association until I was in my early 20s, and I talk about it in Lost Girl, and how devastating it was for me to find out that I was born out of a bet and a mistake. So I thought at the time, until I had a major intervention at age 19. But it does a number on you. You have no parental figure. In this case, my mother was not involved as well. She was also a drug addict and abandoned us when I was 5 years old. Said she was going to the grocery store and never came back. And
Wow.
so we should have ended up in the foster system had it not been for my amazing grandmother who rescued us.
Oh, I see. And did you forgive your mother for that?
Many, many decades later, yes, my mother actually did kick her drug addiction, and my grandmother gave us back to her when I was about 9 or 10, and that's when she moved us to Austin. She found religion, and tried to really get her life straight. But Jesse, she found religion and was trying to be disciplined in her church going, but she never really dealt with her mental illness that plagued her life. So we went from one home of a destructive addict to another home of a mentally ill bipolar person, and it was very very problematic in my upbringing. I did forgive her. I was probably in my 20s when I first started forgiving. It was a 10-year process for me, Jesse. It did not happen overnight. I was a very angry young adult, and as a result, started making poor choices myself. Ended up
Right.
pregnant at 17, on drugs myself, and just repeating the cycle of
Yeah.
dysfunction that normally exists in these inner city homes, and with parents that don't grow up with family members. And so, but I did forgive her, and I talk a whole chapter in the book is dedicated to the power of forgiveness
Right.
and the power that it brings to release you, and not the individual, but you, for healing.
So did you tell her you forgave her for what she did?
I did. My mother, and she, bless her heart, she passed away at 62 about 10 years ago of breast cancer. And she went to her deathbed never really forgiving herself, I think. But I told her I forgave her and released her. She never really truly acknowledged what she did. I remember a conversation I had with her. I was probably in my early 20s, and I said, "Mom, I want you to know I forgive you for all of the abuse and the abandonment," because there was sexual abuse and physical abuse and emotional abuse, you name it. And she looked at me, Jesse, and said, "Forgive me, honey. What do you forgive me for?" She never really acknowledged that she had hurt me, or my siblings. Her sort of line in the sand was, "Hey, God forgave me. Why don't you let it go? Don't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it." And so she had this perpetual denial and lived in a state of denial, which I loved her where she was, and that's
Yeah.
why we had a great relationship as an adult, but it was very difficult.
Well, the beauty is, it's not necessary for the person to apologize. It's necessary that we should forgive so that God can forgive us. And that's what makes us free. Whether they say they're wrong or not is up to them, but you will go free
Exactly.
once you forgive. That's the whole
Yes,
point of it.
indeed,
And so,
indeed.
and so you went, oh, let me ask. So you came across the borders, your mother did. How do you feel like what's happening now with all the illegals coming in across the border from around the world?
Well, my mother was actually a U.S. citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen. Our families are all U.S.
Oh, I
citizens.
see.
We lived at the border back in the day in El Paso. You could literally cross the border and go to Juarez as a U.S. citizen.
Oh,
So yeah. But you know what? We didn't have the issues then that we have now, and honestly, we haven't had the issues in the last couple of years. It's exasperated, and I'm really saddened when I look at my hometown and what is happening there. It's a tragedy what's going on there, and that we have to fix that issue. It
yeah,
is a humanitarian crisis at an epidemic level. It's a moral crisis. It's a, you name it. It's
yeah.
it's just really a tragedy, and to see that happen in my hometown of El Paso. I still stay in touch with some of my friends. My family don't live there anymore. My friends, and they say it's just unbelievable what's going on there in the city, and it's really decimating the infrastructure. Not only there, Jesse, but everywhere else in Texas where there's a border,
Yeah.
and we really need to get our arms around it.
Why do you think the government is causing this to happen? Because it's happening because the government wanted to happen. They're causing it to happen. Why do you think that is?
Well, so I mean, there's all sorts of conspiracy theories out there and real theories about why people think what's happening is happening. I can tell you that it is a historic proportion in terms of the illegal crossings that are happening. And I think it's somewhere in the, 9 to 10 to 12 million. Somebody told me the other day it was 4 million. And then I heard a $10 million number. And I'm like, what's the real number?
Yeah.
But I think that we have to shut the border. We have to secure our border, and I'm really grateful that our governor here in Texas is taking action. And I was listening to I was reading a policy paper yesterday that they released, and just in the last 48 hours, the crossings have been reduced in Eagle Pass alone from about 3,000 a day to 3 or 4 a day because of the barbed wire that the governor has implemented. So,
Amazing.
Texas has to protect its own borders, and we have to do the thing we have to do to protect ourselves if the federal government will not do it. But I do hope to see some immigration reform happening soon so that this bleeding stops.
So according to your bio, you spent 15 years working in government, right?
I did. I started my career in government working for a woman by the name of Ann Richards, a very famous woman, first woman governor here in Texas. I worked for Ann in the 1980s when she was the state treasurer running for governor. And then I worked for Kay Bailey Hutchison, who became a U.S. Senator. And then my last boss was George W. Bush. So I served the Bush administration, what we call W. Bush, which is the son, for a total of 12 years, both here in the state of Texas. And when he was elected president, he asked me to be on his White House team. So I was in the White House with supporting the president as well.
That's amazing. So are you Republican or Democrat?
Well, I'm registered as a Republican conservative, but I have been known to vote for the candidate and the person that's going to do the right thing for our city, state, and nation. I am not a partisan Republican at all. I'm a conservative. I believe in free trade. I believe in low taxes. I believe in, reformed schools and a good education for every child. I believe in all the things that we aspire to, family values. I come from a Judeo-Christian value, fundamental upbringing. So I tend to aspire my beliefs to the biblical values that are taught in the Bible. And because of that, I guess it makes me a conservative.
And the reason I ask, because Ann Richard was a Democrat and
She
liberal
was.
Democrat, and I know her. I never met her in person, but I know who she is. And I remember when she said, "Don't blame George Bush. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth." You remember that?
Yes, I think that's what took her national when she made that funny statement.
Yeah.
Listen, I started working for Ann when I was on welfare, riddled with post-addiction issues, and I was trying to get my life on track. I had met my husband in the inner city who was working with the gangs, and I lived in the inner city, of course. And I enrolled in a welfare to work program. I'm a high school dropout, Jesse. I do
Right
not have a
on.
formal education, but
Nice.
I enrolled in a welfare to work program, and Anne was sponsoring through the Job Training Partnership Act. She would accept a graduate from that program trying to get off of welfare, with the whole notion of the big welfare reform initiative that was underway in Texas to get single moms back to work.
Yeah.
So I started working for Anne as her receptionist, and I started at the bottom, Jesse. And when I left government, I was an executive and grew my way out of the top. But I really had a lot of respect for Anne. I loved her style and her empowerment, mentality in terms of empowering women. She was what I refer to as an old Democrat in Texas.
Yeah.
Back in the day when Democrats and Republicans used to actually talk to each other, Jesse,
Yeah.
and work together. That doesn't happen anymore. But Anne was one of those reasonable, working with the other side to get things done. And I did not become a Republican until I started working for Kay Bailey Hutchison. So it was really under Kay's leadership that I switched parties. But I am not a partisan individual. I am all about empowering women and supporting kids, and entrepreneurship. So I try to stay away from the nasty politics that exist these days.
Nice. You're not going to believe this. I heard Cecilia Richards. You know who that is?
I do. That's Ann's daughter. Yeah.
She used to be my boss.
Oh, nice. Small world. Where did you work for her?
What a mess. Um,
Yeah.
she used to work for a union, SCLC, I believe, Hospital Service Employees Union.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
worked for the union, and she was my boss when I went to work for the union. And
Yeah.
so I know her very well. I know her husband, her kids,
Yeah.
and
Well, I don't know any of the Richards family. The only person that I worked for a very short stint, about 8 months, was Anne, and of course I was her receptionist, so very much from afar. But
when we
I
used
know
to
she was
meet,
very popular here in Texas.
we used to meet every day. Because she's my boss. I never met her husband, but I know them. I've seen pictures of them and stuff like that. That's very interesting. And then she went, and later on, she became the president of the abortion folks. Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood. Yeah,
Yeah,
she was running Planned Parenthood for a while.
yeah,
Yeah,
amazing.
and she's continued her mom's legacy. She has a school here in Austin. I'm actually going to be giving a keynote in 2 weeks there at the Ann Richards School. And Jesse, that school is incredible. It's the #1 STEM school in the area. And most of the girls there are inner city minority girls, so Hispanic and Black girls. And they're graduating girls at a 99% rate into college. They're really doing amazing things. So I have a lot of respect for Ann and her legacy.
Amazing. When you say you want to empower women, what does that mean?
Well, I do it a variety of ways. Lost Girl is all about that freedom and empowerment, and making your own choices and getting yourself out of your mess, digging out of your mess and making the choices to get you on a trajectory for your future. But I also, Jesse, have dedicated my life to mentoring. I'm a product of my mentors. I had people that invested in me when I had nothing to offer and developed me. I have an initiative here in Texas called Girls of Legacy, and I have 12 minority girls from inner city schools that we're scholarshiping to go to college, and we're mentoring them. I've paired them with business women that can mentor them and come alongside them and do life. I'm really a believer in investing and paying it forward. And I think that these girls that we're working with are high potential girls. And I believe that it's important to give back and to serve the next generation of women that could become leaders in our state. And so Girls of Legacy is all about that. And I've dedicated my whole career to mentoring and leading people and helping people achieve success in their career, just like somebody did for me 30 years ago.
So when you say empower, you mean to help them get jobs and and be able
Tools.
to take care of
It's really
themselves.
just tools. And of course, mentoring can be a variety of things. In my particular career, I have mentored young women and women entrepreneurs in developing their skill set and, teaching them what I've done over time, giving them tools, helping develop a vision or goals. It's really about spending time with the individual to cultivate that leadership within them that they don't know they have until someone extracts it out of them, similar to what my mentors have done in my life.
I want to ask, so your book is called From the Hood to a Millionaire, right?
Correct.
And so are you a millionaire?
Yes, I am. I'm very blessed, Jesse. And I've had a lot of success with a lot of people that have supported me in my business. And we have a very thriving small business here that is growing. And I have been very blessed to aspire to that wealth that God has given through the work of my hands, right? Things don't happen through osmosis, Jesse.
Yes.
Just because we believe it, you have to work really hard. But I have worked really hard, and my husband and I both are very blessed in our family, and I'm very encouraged to be able to tell other entrepreneurs how to achieve that success.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So in your book, uh, I don't want you. I want people to get the book, but do you give them tips on how to become millionaires?
So this is my first book. I am going to write a sequel, so to speak, that will be focused on business entrepreneurship tips. This one is my story. It's the Lost Girl story, and it really puts Rebecca out there in terms of my raw and real, authentic testimony. And it also, I would say, the last two chapters talk about the steps that I had to take into my transformation. And some of those steps were starting not only our for-profit, but our nonprofit as well, working in the inner city with kids and giving back. So I give a few nuggets in there just to tease people a little bit on those
Right.
steps. But it's the first book of many, and I'll look forward to putting that out there. I am going to launch a business series in April on my Facebook and on my website that's going to be focused around business entrepreneurship. And it'll be a 7-week series talking about how I built the business and grew it to multi-million.
Okay.
So I will be launching that in the spring, and people can connect with me through the website for that.